Okay, so we're holding in Hilchos Melicha Siman Ayin Vav, which we began last time. This Siman deals with Basar Litzli, whether somebody has no salt, and therefore his only recourse is to broil the meat in the permissible way, meaning that the blood has a place to drain, or he has salt, but he doesn't want to cook it. He wants to barbecue. So even though we're learning Hilchos Melicha, there are times where Melicha is really not so much a prerequisite. Ultimately, we know that the Melicha serves several purposes. Melicha draws the blood out. Melicha can be used to preserve meat for a long, extended period of time. And in that case, the Melicha is done a little bit differently than the Melicha to draw out the blood. In drawing out the blood from the meat, there are various concerns. Of course, it has to be a perforated kli, similar to tzli, where blood has to have a place to drain. We're definitely concerned with this blood draining off and not sticking around. Otherwise, we get into trouble that this blood can go back in even though it first came out. So that's definitely an issue, which of course we've already covered on what happens if somebody did by mistake do melicha in just a regular pot. It obviously is going to be a problem. There are various situations where tzli is not only an option, it's the only option. In Siman Ayin Vav, we will see a situation where you just simply don't want to cook. But it really could also be applying, Siman Ayin Vav could also be applying to any situation where that's the only option for reasons that we've already covered. And what are they? Situation number one is something that can happen actually if somebody's not careful, and that is Basar Sheshah Shloisha Yomim. Meat, you shechted the meat, and you didn't get around to soaking it in water, and or you did, soak it in water, but it sat around again 3 days without being taken care of. So what happens, apparently, the chemistry behind it, or the anatomy of the meat, somehow the blood mityabesh bifnim. It somehow dries up in such a way that melicha can no longer work on it. So meat that is transported here from the schlacht house somewhere in the Midwest has to be very, very frozen or very fresh and quickly brought here, or even better than that, just salted over there, which is, I think, what they do these days anyway.
So the whole problem with 3 days and so on without salting.
Right.
So it's counted from the moment when Shita.
That's correct. Yeah.
And then 74
From
hours
actually
after
from the time it was soaked. So if you went ahead and at the last minute before the 3 days up, you put it in water again, it's okay. You have more time. Remember that?
So then you have another 3 days.
We got to do chazara.
Yeah, of course. That's most important. So then you have another 3 days. So
Exactly.
But you can't do a second time then.
No, you can do it. If it's in water, it's okay.
I mean, you took it out of the water.
You interrupt this.
Right. You took it out of the water. You waited another 2 days and
a little bit less, right?
23 hours.
Right.
And now you put it in water again.
Right.
You have another 3 days.
Yes.
So you can do that.
You won't be able to do that because the meat will be spoiled by then. Yeah. So it doesn't really work like that too many times. Yeah. 3 24-hour days. 3 24-hour days. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this is actually a very important area of melicha, which is actually relevant, can easily happen, and people have to be aware of it. Especially if you own a store, and even if you don't own the meat store, you noticed it. Somehow it wasn't taken care of in timely fashion. That particular scenario has a fix, and what is that? You can still do tzli.
So wait a second, to the water again.
Yeah.
So actually the 3 days applies with respect to 2 different. You have 3 days to soak it, and once it was soaked, you have 3 days till you salt it. How does that work?
No. Well, the first soaking, remember, is to soften the meat, to remove the dam ba'in, also
but how
the
long do you have
hadacha.
time until you have to? You have indefinite
Same
time?
thing, 3 days.
So you have 1 3 days.
It's 1 3 day period, regardless. But once you've soaked it, you have the 3 days from the soaking.
From the soaking. So you have 3 days from the time
From
of
the
shita
shechta, that's
till
correct.
Then in which time you have to at least have soaked it.
Yes.
Minimum.
Right.
And if you did soak it, then from that point on,
you have the same
from
3
the point
days.
you put it in the water, or the point you take it out of the water.
Point you take it out of the water.
Out of the water.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a good point too. From the point you take it out of the water, and this is of course an important fact, because what happens if it was not done right, then it's not treif, but you're limiting your options, or the balabosta's option. You can only do tzli. You can barbecue the meat. You can't cook it.
Now this is even if it wasn't soaked, or at least it had to be soaked in order to be doing tzli.
No.
Let's say you didn't soak, you didn't salt, you can still do sleep.
We'll talk about it today.
Okay.
That's the sheer,
Okay.
that's the Ayin Vav. That's Ayin reading about. I'm just going back a little bit in time. In that there are certain situations or scenarios where tzli is the only option. That was one. What was the second one? The second one that we spoke about in Samach Tes as well was Basar she nichbash, or sheshoro, I should say, in the language that is there. Sheshoro b'mayim, me'es le'es, which is, we are familiar with that scenario. Meat that was sitting in the water, covered with water over a 24-hour period, that's called kavush. And we remember kavush from a lot of halachas. In Basar b'chalav, in Taaruvot, kavush means that it's being, in a sense, pickled. Or is there a better translation for kavush in English? Yeah, it's sitting in water, covered by water, soaked in water. And kavush, we learned, is kemevushal. Oh no, if kavush is kemevushal, then we're going to have a problem. I mean, if you cooked a piece of meat without salting it, that could happen too. Somebody just threw it wasn't salted, and it's cooked. Well, then you run into a problem there, because you have to figure out if there's shishin keneged the dam, which we don't know, so you have to figure shishin keneged the whole chaticha, or the whole chicken, whatever is being cooked. And then there's a question whether that chaticha chicken is mutter or also, that depends on the mechaber or the ramah. And it depends if it's a Shabbos or not. After I have shishim, can I still have that chicken? Because I already had shishim. So that's a case where you did not salt it at all. It's also a very big problem. But if you can figure out that if you have shishim against the blood or against the whole chaticha, then you may have saved the day. But the case of kavush, do we really say kavush kemevushal? That what? That now I can no longer do melicha? Because if you cook a piece of meat, I mean, even remember the story, the case where you pouring hot boiling water on the chicken to remove easily the feathers. You can't do that. You have to be careful with applying hot water to a chicken before it's salted, because it's like cooking it. And if it's like cooking it, you won't be able to get the dam out. Even with tzli, it's stuck. The melicha, the natural process of melicha, the miraculous fact that somehow salt draws out blood, it won't work if certain things happen to that meat, including bishul. You can't do it now anymore. It won't do it. It's stuck. So that was the question. That's a question that's discussed, I think, the way you're shining pretty much the poskim. What happens by kavush? We know kavush kemevushal, but does kavush kemevushal mean even legabe this din, that if the meat sat in water for over 24 hours, that the melicha will no longer work on it? The Chaber says no. You can still do tzli. Tzli you can. Okay, at least Baruch Hashem.
That's the cover.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem, I can at least do tzli. Wow. Well, because otherwise I would really be concerned.
But just be established thing, but not after pouring hot water on.
No, that's a whole different story.
Only if it was covered.
Only covers. We're talking about, right? Talking about Basar. Right, shish. Let me just read it inside. Basar meluchlach bedomim shenishra b'mayim meis le'ez. It's bloody. It's soaking in water. Yesh oishim la'oichlakim tzli. Elam ken yesh b'mayim shishim keneged. I should add, the Mechaber does say, unless you really have shishim keneged the basar, then you may be able still to do melicha. But the yesh oishim, that's Ramah, afilu l'tzli, b'ochinol. Yeah, the Ramah is machmir, and even on tzli on that. Because he's choishes to the poskim who hold kavush kemevushal even legabi this din. We know kavush kemevushal, but the question was, does it apply here too, to the extent that I can't do any melicha anymore?
So he asks it all together?
He asks it even to tzli. Yeah, he's machmir even to tzli because he calls it like a mevushal. If it's like a mevushal, you can't do anything to a mevushal.
So Ashkenazim don't have that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how he feels that. Yeah, that's a basar sheshol. You have to be careful not to leave it soaking overnight. I mean that. But you may be able to rely on the Mechaber. I mean, there are cases where we rely.
So a caterer could come to you and...
Yeah, we'll consider the whole situation when it comes up. Yeah, but anyway, what we will see in Siman Ayin Vav that also takes us back in time is another situation. Maybe I'll just mention it now, but then we'll see it inside. And that is what happens if you did melicha without hadocha kamaisa. Hadocha kamaisa meaning the first hadocha. As you know, there's different kinds of hadocha. There's the first hadocha to rinse off the dam ba'ein, which is besides the soaking in the water to soften it. In a sense, you can hose it down. And that's important because dam ba'ein, the properties of dam ba'ein are different than the dam ha'ivorim, the dam that's inside. Somehow it's a different makeup. And we discussed this a little bit. It's hard to detect it, but somehow dam ba'in that has come out from the animal after shechita is thicker, or it's just its composition is different, and therefore if it just comes from the outside onto the surface of the basar, because it's not coming from inside, it could become absorbed and not come out anymore. So we need to rinse it off. Okay, some are machmir with that more than others. However, what happened if you did not do the first hadacha? So the question is, well, okay, did that salt that did sit on top of the meat to draw out the blood, it's a double-edged sword. Double-edged. In other words, it has the koach of taking out the blood, but it also has the koach of taking in the blood that's on top. Remember that? Right. The salt works wonders somehow. It can take out, and apparently it does have koach to take in too, especially this outside blood. Well, we know that there's something called kebolokach poltoi. I mean, things go in, they can come out, but not this. At least not according to some. Opinion is, this is a different kind of dam. We're concerned you didn't do adacha. Oh no! Now this dam, according to one opinion, at least that's one of the reasons for adacha kamaisa, is to get rid of that blood. Otherwise, it's going to put in that dam inside the basar. So what do you do then if somebody by mistake did do that? On that, we also had a mechaber ramo, if you remember. But that has nothing to do with sleep per se. That was more of, well, do I get a second chance at melicha? Because apparently, even though you hold that it's not such a concern about the dam ba'in, if there was no hadacha, perhaps, according to the other opinions, then the melicha didn't work. Then if it didn't work, then I do a second melicha. Or I for sure have to, according to the ones who say it didn't work. The question is, can it be done? And Mechaber says, yes, go ahead and do a second melicha and you're fine. So this is good if you didn't cook it yet. So if it's not cooked, you realize you didn't do adacha kamaisa, Mechaber says, you know what, go and do a second melicha to do the job right. The Ramah says, no way. We're concerned about the dam ba'in going inside. But he, on that case, does say, the hefsed meruba, you can go ahead and rely on that sheet that says, okay, do a second melicha.
And when you say that, is that a form of b'diah?
No, it's a hefsed meruba, not a b'diah, but something else completely. So this last halacha that I just mentioned will help us a little bit in this siman, because in this siman we will see something that in some ways is better than a second melicha, and that's called sli. So if you hold a second melicha is possible, then for sure sli should also be possible. That's why I mentioned this halacha, so when we talk about this, you'll understand what it relates to. All right, so there were two scenarios that we said that sli is pretty much the only option, especially according to the Mechaber. One is basar shenishra in the water me'is le'is. He says, according to some, unless you have 60, that's the only option is sli. You can't do any more melicha for bishul purposes, for cooking. The other situation is basar sheshaha. Shloisha yomim me'is le'is, the 24 hours for 3 days in a row. It wasn't salted. So now the blood is going to have a hard time coming out the conventional way. So you're stuck with the only option of barbecuing. So Baruch Hashem, at least you don't have to throw away the meat. There are times where the meat we saw, it's asur. You have to throw it away. Give it to the dogs or whatever. So those are the two. What other situation do we have where tzli is a good idea, according to some is the only idea? And that was with preparing the heart. Not for a bypass, I'm not talking about that heart, but the heart of a cow that you want to eat for dinner. So these are internal organs that require different processing, a different preparation to get all the blood out, or if they have any blood, because as we said, there are some organs that have less blood, some that have more blood. So one opinion holds that the only way to deal with the heart properly is tzli. Okay. Then the other case, where tzli was pretty much the only advisable method of preparation, and that was kavod, liver, which we did. So now we're in Siman Ayin Vav, which we're talking about exclusively about tzli again, but this time it's not because it's the only option, it's because I like to. I want to barbecue meat, I don't want to cook the meat. So if I want to barbecue the meat, the halacha is, I don't really need to salt it. And that's where the machlokes is. Do you need to salt it? A little bit perhaps, because there is a makor in the Gemara that they did salt every meat, even though it was meant for tzli. At least that's the way some of the Rishonim understanding. That's what we have a machlokes. The machlokes is whether meat that is going to only be barbecued doesn't need to be salted at all. So we mentioned Rambam and Rashi who hold that yes, melicha is required, but not a melicha gemura, not a complete melicha. What does it mean, not complete? So based on the meforshim, it appears that Rashi says a little bit of melicha means just a little bit of salt, which is what we do today. We put a little bit of salt on the meat. The Rambam seems to be saying you need a regular amount of melicha, but it's not a regular melicha because you don't have to wait the full half an hour or whatever it is that you usually wait. That's how it appears from the Magid Mishnah, I believe. The Maram has his own opinion. Maram, I think, if I recall correctly, says the only time you need a little bit of melicha is if you plan to cook it after the tzli. Because maybe, yeah, no, Maram in Lublin. I think so. Yeah, I think so. I believe so, if I recall correctly. But, or it could be Maram. I don't remember. Sorry, I saw the Maram. I didn't check. But anyway, so what's the question? Well, if you plan to cook it, we may be concerned that the tzli was not done 100%. It was done only for a few minutes, so there may be some blood, and some blood may come out with the bishul. So therefore, if you're going to do bishul after tzli, he says, do some melicha before that. Okay. So these are the various shitas. And, of course, this is all taken from the Gemara, in Menachos, where we see that Ivorim, the various limbs of the korbanos, that when they used to be makter, they put them in the mizbeah. Before that, they would salt it, turn it around, salt it on all sides, and then put them on top of the mizbeah. So over there, it appears to be that it says that you do the same for tzli. So since it says you do the same for tzli, that's how some of the Rishonim learn that this is the exact same way you would do it for tzli. But Tosfos, the Rosh, the Ran, the Rashba hold that anytime you do tzli, you don't need melicha at all. So that's important to know, that me'ikar adin, a lot of Rishonim say, you're going to do tzli, you don't need melicha. And you know what? Even the other ones, b'di'evet, if you didn't do anything, it's okay. Why is it okay? Because we hold the ma'isa and ma'isa, me'ikar adin, what does the tzli accomplish? Nura shoiv mishav. The fire has enough power to draw out the blood, just like melicha, if not better. No, draw it out. Yeah, you can actually see the blood draining if you have a lot of blood. Remember, this is not even covered. So you should be expecting red liquid oozing out of the meat. Yeah. So that's basically the machlokes. La halacha lemaisen. Let's see the mechaber. Hatzli ein tzorich melicha. So the mechaber in Sif Aleph says tzli does not require melicha. Why? So he explains if Yisha'esh shoev adam shebo me'atzmo, because the fire will draw out the blood by itself. Right? So the mechaber says clearly like Tosfos. And the Ramah is going to, later on in Sif Beis, we're going to see the Ramah is going to bring the Yesh Oimrim that you do require some form of melicha. But Mechaber in Sif Aleph says, no problem. Aval in dam acher nataf al tzli, the Mechaber immediately adds, however, if other blood came out from somewhere on top of the tzli, then you have a problem. Afilo oiso dam utzonin, even if that is cold blood, but the meat is hot. Lo amrina, we're not going to say sha'esh sho'avo, that the esh will just burn it up, any blood that fell on it. Oser mimeno kedei netila, it will actually aser kedei netila, which the concept of kedei netila we're also familiar with from Basar B'cholav and Taaruvot, especially Taaruvot, where it's more than a klipa. Remember that? We had a kedei klipa, we had a kedei netila, which is a little bit thicker than a kedei klipa, that will have to be removed if blood came from the outside on this somehow it landed on this meat that is on the barbecue while it's hot, of course. So you're going to make a kedei netila. Now, we know from Taaruvos and so on.
So can it be avoided, a kedei netila? You can do a kedei netila.
You have to do a kedei netila. Once it's already roasting, hot. Yeah. You have. Yeah. Remember.
Brush it off.
No. That's the problem with heat. The problem with heat is that it causes blias. The only question is how much of a blia. So we know the Ramah, the famous Ramah that we're not bekim today between kochush and shaman. So because we have that Ramah, that's going to be applied over here too. I believe the Shach and Taz, I believe both of them, they say since we basically follow along with that Ramah that we're not bekim be kochush l'shaman, unless you know for sure something is kochush, maybe, even then some are machmer, then you need 60. Netila is not enough. And the Pri Megadim, I think, was the one that said that in this case, even if you took the shishim, even if you had shishim, you still got to take the Netila, because the dam was there. The shishim is just, to save everything else. But the Netila, you still have to take from the spot where the dam fell. So that was the Ramah, and that was the din by in Taaruvot, because of the problem of distinguishing between kochosh and sham and fatty meat. Because when you have true fatty meat, you have a concept called pi'apua. The isser or the blia is mefa'apea. Mefa'apea means it travels, I think, right? I guess that you could say that.
Yeah.
It travels throughout the meat. So it's no longer penetration of the netila. Going through the whole thing. It goes through the whole thing. You need shishim. All right. However, even though that is clear to us from the past, there is an interesting sharidura. In the Marshal Paskas like that sharidura, but we don't. The Pri Megadim says we don't pass like this, but it's good to know. He says the reason why we're machmir here more than the kedei netila is because he holds that afiyah and sli, afiyah baking and sli, are mefa'peh bekuloi. He doesn't get involved in the shaman or kochush. He holds that the heat, the level of heat involved in baking and barbecuing, is pretty much equivalent to that which happens through cooking. That it goes all over. It's hot enough to. But again, Pri Megadim says we don't paskin like that. We don't hold baking and sli have the same status as bishul. It's hot, so if you have two objects touching in the oven, you're going to have a problem. Some penetration, but not like bishul, well, it travels everywhere. But there is such an opinion. It's good to know. That's what they hold. That pi'apur happens even by afiyah and even by tzli, but the Pri Megadim says we don't paskin like that. In other words, it doesn't make that much of a difference, because if you're going to be machmir like the Ramah, then you're going to be concerned about kochosh and shaman. It's only good to know because sometimes it's a true kochosh. Especially if it's in the Rabbanan and it's a true kochosh where there's no doubt about it, then you can be lenient. But if you hold like this sharei duro, or like the Marshal Paskins here, then it would be a problem when you have the level of heat that you have in baking and barbecue. Okay, so it's an additional point that's good to know. Either way, here you would have a chumrah more than a kedei netila in that situation. Okay, now I was reading the Aruch HaShulchan on this seif, and he adds a little bit of a spice. It's good to sometimes to review what others write. They add a little bit nofech, a little bit more depth, perhaps more details. And he says, the whole idea of why we have a minig that we will see, the Ramah speaks about, of salting the meat in preparation for tzli, is not so much me'ikar adin because of the blood. Because let's be realistic, he says, the blood is going to come out with the fire. So don't think that we're machmir to salt it because we actually believe you need both. In other words, step one, put salt, draw out as much blood as you can, and then do it. It says the whole idea of the minhag, of putting blood today, is only because it was done in the past. And why was it done in the past? To give tam to the basar. That when you prepare the basar for tzli, you want to give it some taste. And that is how they did it on the mizbeach too, he said. So it was more of a procedural thing, much more than a requirement or a necessity. Part of the, in a sense.
Well, so if it's for the taste.
It's for the taste because that's the custom of preparing meat. He says, you put a little bit of salt on it too, but don't think that is because we need to get the blood out and you need to do it this way plus sli. No, you pass them that.
So according to this, if someone has problem with salt because of his blood pressure, he would be able to do without.
Yes, lechatchila he would be able to do without. Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, he would be able to do it. Exactly, that's a good point. If he has a problem with salt, I wonder. I know that they tell me that people can detect kosher meat because it's a little saltier.
It doesn't have the taste of blood. Yes,
and it doesn't. It tastes different. I'm wondering if they can detect the little bit of salt that was put on sli, or does it? Because the fire does burn everything up. So even if somebody had an issue with salt, wouldn't it take it away completely? I don't know. You'd have to try it. Do some samples. You taste any saltiness it is. or it's not a matter of tasting. The question is if anything is left, chemically wise, if that would be an issue or not.
And also the question is, someone has a problem with salt, how much salt can he have?
Yeah, that's also true. Because I'm sure just a little bit of drop, it wouldn't make a difference. How often do you have barbecues?
And I know there are sometimes the Rabbi Hennick's house there. He has a whole food prepared for
Is that right?
Yeah, everything they get a whole different dish.
Oh wow, good to know. Yeah. And there are apparently people who have a problem with that.
People
Yeah.
who come there with serious problems with. Apparently there are also freezing
Yeah.
problems.
Yeah, sure.
People who come there with, everything is different.
Yeah.
The soup is.
All right. So we will discuss it a little bit more in Sif Beis. But before we go to Sif Beis, there's another issue that is raised here by the Shach and other Meforshim about Dam Shepirish. When we roast, shouldn't we be concerned that there may be some dam that's left behind? And we had this question before come up also, that let's assume you had even shishim. Remember, I'll tell you what the case was. You had shishim keneged the basar that was cooked without melicha. Oh, great, we have shishim keneged the dam. All right, but what about the chaticha? So the chaticha, the mechaber is the one that holds the chaticha is mutter once you have shishim. Why? Because he holds, and that's really how we really paskin me'ikar din. Whatever blood came out, didn't go back in. Whatever blood didn't come out is never going to come out. It's there to stay. And we don't say it moved mimokom to mokom. There is a problem with the concept dam shepirish. Dam shelo pirish means dam that's frozen in the meat, sitting there, static. I guess it's static. It's not moving. Is that the right word? Oh. Right? Raw meat. You want to eat raw meat. Sushi is raw fish, right? So you want to eat sushi meat, right? Raw meat. You just shechted a deer.
Steak tartare.
Yeah. Huh?
Sure, that's
yeah.
raw meat.
It's raw, as raw as it could be.
Yes, it's raw meat.
Yeah. So you don't want to cook it at all. You don't want to roast it. You don't want to barbecue. Nothing. Can you? Yes. Just make a shahakol. Make a bracha, right? And then you can have it. Rinse off the dam bein. You can't have blood. But what about the dam inside? It's dam shelo pirish. It's not a problem. Dam shepirish, even though it pirish, is also not so much a problem once you cook because it's dam shenizbashel. Dam shenizbashel is also midrabana, but it's midrabana. But dam shelo pirish is okay. So technically, you don't have salt, you don't have fire, and you don't mind eating raw. Go ahead. As we say in Hebrew, beteavon. Huh? How do you say that in English? With a good appetite. Yeah. Anyway. So the question is, what happens if you did roast it, and you maybe didn't roast it enough? Didn't that cause dam shepirish? The heat has the potential of drawing blood. If it does, maybe it drew some blood that never came out. You see that? So that's the question that's raised here. The point is, if you did a real well done roast, barbecue, and you got all the blood out, then there's no problem. But wouldn't there be a concern that perhaps some of the blood did not come out? And that question is really raised when somebody did not do a full tzli. He did it only for chatzit tzli. Like they say, rare, well done. He didn't do it well done, where it's dark. Well, you can see something that was roasted very well, and something that was not roasted very well. Should we especially then be concerned? Then even more so than if you did it well done. Apparently it's mashma, we're not that concerned because most probably you got most of the blood out. But when you did not do it completely, and it appears that even a lot of Rishonim or Achonim accept that if a person did chatzit tzli, it's sufficient. But even though we hold it sufficient, it raised that question about dam shepirish. But what about the dam shepirish? Now, how do you deal with that? So that's an important detail that comes up over here. That because we're dealing with basar tzli, that this is not called, according to the Rosh, there's no problem with dam shepirish. No problem at all. No. The only real case of dam shepirish, according to the Rosh and others, I believe, I know the Rosh, is only mechaim, not le'achar shchita. If somehow the blood in a particular spot in the animal nitzrar means it coagulated, it got a klap, a makah somehow, and it coagulated. It got all blue in one spot. There's a lot of blood in that spot. So you need to cut it out. But the problem is, that's dam shepirish. That's really pirish, and it's pirish mechaim while it was alive. That the Rosh says is also. That you can't have. That's called, according to him, dam shepirish. But according to him, dam shepirish after the shchita, that's not dam shepirish. He doesn't mind that.
So he doesn't see any reason to salt it.
No, you got to get the blood out.
According to what for?
Yeah.
Once the
Lechatchila.
blood is and the diabetes you would be able to eat. You're saying because you said that.
Yeah, no, I'm saying that's not the that doesn't have the same din of dam shepirish. It still is dam. You still have to get it out, but it doesn't have the same status. Yeah, I would have to see it inside to tell you a little bit better, what the difference is. You didn't salt it, and it moved. In other words, if it moved or you didn't salt it. In other words, what would be the exact difference between them? I don't remember now.
I thought the whole thing was that which dam is for be'it, dam shepirish. That's the whole issue.
That's yeah.
Yeah. And if he holds that that's not even dam shepirish, once the animal
No. So there's a question I told you. It's a question of what kind of dam you would call it. Is it the rabbanon? Is it the rice? So that's the problem. Is it a lav?
So maybe he's still the rabbanon.
Exactly. It has to do with that. Not that it's not that it's mutter. Nobody says it's mutter. It's a question more of where, in what status is that dam. That's all. Yeah. Yeah. Nochinami. Yeah. I just don't remember exactly his language, his wording, but that's basically the chiluk. Yeah. So according to the Rosh, it wouldn't be so much a problem unless it's Pirish Mechayim. So here, what happens is that if you do roast it, we say that the esh, the fire, shoev, it basically burns out all the blood, and whatever remains, it's not a problem, because he holds it's not dam shepirish. And even if it's pirish, it's not dam shepirish. In other words, even if it did move, who's to say it moved? But even in other words, because if you're drawing out with fire, we assume it drew everything. Why should it draw everything? If it didn't draw everything, that means it's there to stay. And even if you say it did move a little bit, according to the Rosh, it's not dam shepirish. Some hold that it is dam shepirish. I think Rashba, Rabbeinu Peretz, the Ran, they hold that the dam that moves. And because of that concern, doesn't mean it happened here. Because it's fire. The fire perhaps did draw everything out, but because there's a concern that some dam could have been pirish, you want to make sure you do a good job when you roast it. At least kechatzitz liyoseh. The Shach says at least it has to be halfway roasted. Otherwise, we're concerned. It began to heat up, and as it's beginning to heat up, it's drawing the blood. It's causing the blood to move. And according to a lot of Rishonim, that's dam shepirish. It's a problem. So the Shach said you better do a good job roasting it, at least chatzitz liyosei. So that was Sif Aleph. Rotzol im lo yachtzli v'le'ochle Sif Beis v'le'ochle belo hadocha oise. Quick introduction to Sif Beis. Sif Beis talks about hadocha after melicha. At least the Mechaber does. Now we know that there is a regular hadocha before melicha. And a very important hadocha needs to happen before melicha to take up the dam ba'in. It needs to soak it, to soften the meat. But we also learned of the second hadacha, which is also important for another reason. The hadacha that comes after melicha, for what purpose? That salt is full of blood now. Just for that alone. Got to get rid of it. You don't want to cook it with the salt now, even though you took out all the blood. Some of it at least is in the blood, is in the salt. So it's important to note that this is the hadacha that the Mechaber is talking about. He's not talking now, he's not going to mention the hadacha kamaisa, the first hadacha, only the second one, but the Ramah will mention the first one too. At least he puts an emphasis on the first one, for other reasons. Okay, so the Mechaber says like this, Rotzolim loyach tzli. He wanted to salt something for tzli, uleochlo belo hadacha, and you don't want to wash it. You put a little salt, and you just want to go ahead and roast it without hadacha. Can you do that? It says yes. Or you say you can do that. Ve'ein lochush ledam she'al hamelach. Don't be concerned about the dam that's in the salt. Why not? Because the fire is going to burn it all up. But the Mechaber says, but wait a minute. Don't think that everybody agrees with this opinion. Yesh mishoimer dehane mile. That's as long as keshemolcho v'tzoleu miyad. You put a little bit of salt in the meat. Immediately, you put it on the fire. Then you don't have to worry about the hadacha. Because you're immediately exposing it to the heat of the fire, and the fire will burn it all up, whatever blood came out. I mean, how much can come out in a few seconds? Some maybe came out, but that little bit can be managed by the fire. So some say, but if it actually was sitting around for 18 minutes, the salt already absorbed a lot of blood, and it's asur. Therefore, in that situation, according to this opinion, of course, you would have to be mediachet before you were roasting it. The question, of course, what happens if you didn't? So the mechaber is going to say you do it later. You can still do it after the fact.
The roasting or the salting?
The hadacha. If you didn't do the hadacha after the salting, you should have done. You could do. So that's what this seif speaks about. But from the mechaber itself, it's only mashma that he's concerned with this second hadacha. We don't know how he holds, even though we see from of what happens if you didn't do first hadacha and you put melech on it. Aren't you supposed to do first hadacha all the time? Yes, the answer is of course you're supposed. What?
It's in order the melech should be effective. So if you didn't do the first salting, you have salt to draw out the blood.
Yeah, but you don't really need that. Remember, we don't really need that salt anyway.
But the mechaber does require it.
No, here remember, mechaber here is talking about the second hadacha, right? Only the second hadacha. Once you put some salt, remove the salt before you do tzli. That salt is absorbing blood. You want to get rid of it. He did not talk about here, if you're doing tzli, what about the first hadacha before the melicha? No mention of it.
So if you weren't salting it, you wouldn't have to do it, according to the mechaber.
We hold the world nefirtzach. In other words, this is the way we conduct ourselves, that we always do hadacha. You remove the dam be'ein.
Even without salting?
Even without salting. You would always have to do hadacha.
That would be the first hadacha.
Yeah, the question still will be, what happens b'di'evet if you did it? So we'll talk about that. But mechaber doesn't even seem to mention it. He only talks about the second kaiva of hadacha. That take care of, especially if it's going to be sitting there for a while, before you do the roast, it's going to absorb. At least according to the second. What?
My proposed hypothesis?
Yes.
Since he's assuming that you will, and since the first hadacha is required to make it more effective.
Right.
So therefore, if he didn't require a first, it would be a big chiddush. Because salting, he's assuming you are salting.
Yeah.
So he should mention it, be a big chiddush.
Right.
So if he's not mentioning it, I think it's that he's assuming that you're going to do the hadacha before the salting.
Well, not everybody learns like that. Some actually say that the mechaber would be okay if you do the first hadacha either.
Well, I would think that.
Why? Because you're going to be putting it directly in the fire right away. Because remember, that salt is not so much to draw out the blood.
Are you going now according to for the taste?
No, that's the pashut shot. Really, you're not really doing melicha here. That's the Shulchan explains. That's the way. I mean, he explains to everybody approximately that's the reason really we do melicha is not so much to draw out the bone. We're not dependent on that.
That's why that's
because we're doing sli. Somehow we have a meaning of doing that. We're not getting into the reasons. There could be other reasons too, but we're definitely not depending on the salt. We know the fire is going to do just as good as the job as the salt. So now the question is, why doesn't he mention first hadacha? What would he hold about first hadacha?
So is there an opinion that we could actually do without salting?
Yes. Sure, that there is such an opinion. Mechaber brings down that sli ain't sorich melicha. Meikar adin at all. Why do we do it nonetheless? It's a minhag to do it. Yeah. Some say yes, you do need melicha.
Also then, it's salting.
So you see, but
so then we okay.
What? Yeah.
And if we didn't salt,
No, you remove the dam ba'in. You want to remove the dam ba'in.
So I'm
Yeah.
going to ask you, does the mechaber require sort of the second soaking salting?
No, you don't need a second soaking
So
or
he
rinsing.
doesn't mention soaking at all if you're not.
Right. You never mentioned it. So either it's assumed, like you were saying before, perhaps everybody does hadacha kamaisa to do the dam ba'in, or perhaps as some say, he says if you're going to be burning it right away on the fire, you don't even need that hadacha. So that's what we're going to be seeing now. So just what the mechaber in his base says, even though he said before that you don't really need, that's a different question. If you want to do it anyway, right? Then there's a question of whether you're going to run into a problem or not. Well, he says it according to some. If it's going to sit around for a while, you need to do it. If it's not, you don't even need to do hadacha, second hadacha, because you're putting it directly in the fire.
So all this applies by barbecue.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So here the Maharal says, therefore, according to the opinion, and if you didn't, as we said before, you can do it afterwards. Okay, so now we're ready for the Ramah. This is a long Ramah, so we'll go through the various halachas that are learned in this Ramah. Yesh oimrim detzli boy hadochot chila. Now he says, well, first of all, some say, even though I'm doing sli, I do require hadachot chila. Oh, you're talking about a different hadachot. Yeah, hadachot chila. Some say we need that too. V'yesh oimrim the tzorich gam tzas melichat chila. Even though you just heard from the mechaber that he holds that sli ain't tzorich melicha, some say you need a little bit of melicha too. He quotes Rashi. And what's the minhag? At least in Poland, in the surrounding countries. Ladicho minhag ladicho tchilo v'gam lemolcho ktsas kasher nitcha b'shpud. The minhag is to rinse it off, salt it a little bit as you're putting it onto the spit. Right? The barbecue spit, that's the way it's called. V'tzoleo miyad. And then you roast it right away. Kodem shit maleh milachdav, of course. You try your best to roast it right away before that salt gets too much blood into it. Mihu, but im lo yidicho, if you did not rinse it first, the first adacha, v'lo molcho klein, you didn't even salt it a bit, or molcho, you salted it below adacha even. Tchila, v'nitzle kach, and this was roasted this way. Motar, it's still motar b'di'eved, because b'di'eved would rely on the opinions that that fire is going to do a great job. It's going to burn everything up, get all the blood out, no problem. I have one condition, the Ramah says. You cannot have let that salt sit on that meat without first doing hadacha for too long. Because if you did not do the first hadacha and the salt sat there for a while, remember the old halacha, not having done melicha without hadacha, according to the Ramah? Oh no! Now the dam ba'in is going to go inside. So he says, so that as long as you don't do that, as long as it did not sit with the salt without hadacha, the shear of melicha, which is at least 18 minutes. You know, we use 18 minutes. Erev Shabbos, you don't have time. That's the bare minimum, 18 to 20 minutes. If you can't do the full hour of melicha, or half an hour, according to some. So according to that, if it sat there for that amount of time without hadacha, that's a problem. And that's what he says. You stuck. You shouldn't have salted it. You would have been better off not salting it. Because we just learned that b'di'eved, even according to the Ramah, you didn't salt it, you didn't rinse it, you just took it straight to the fire. Good, you're done. But you let that salt, put that salt on it, and we're not talking about too much salt even. And you let it sit for 18 minutes or so, it's a problem. It's awesome. But what the Ramah does not say here, because I guess he's figuring we remember what he said before. And what did he say before? And that's why I mentioned the halacha previously. That in the event it's a hefsed meruba, you can do a second melicha. Remember that? That's why I mentioned that. In the case, in the event where somebody did not do hadacha rishoina, which is in some ways a bigger problem than the second hadacha, in some ways, at least here in Sli, it could be a more potential problem. And he salted it without hadacha, then there's a concern of the dam ba'in going inside through the same salt. Now what? Mechaber says, just go ahead and do a second melicha. And the Ramah says, no. It's no good. You can't do anything. Now what? Well, the hefsed meruba, you can do a second melicha. All right, so let me just read it from the inside. Actually, I should say the yesh oisun, the mechaber himself says the yesh oisun, so it's not something so simple. The Ramah says, even just a little bit, just a little bit of salt like you do for tzli. If it was 5 minutes, you didn't do hadacha rishona, you're stuck. Mihu, but b'malkum hefsed meruba yesh lehater, you can be mater. If you only did it a little bit, if you only rinsed it a little bit, then it's even muter b'di'eved. So that's the problem. You know, if you didn't do the hadacha, it's at least meikar, according to the Ramah, it's asur. Not according only to the Ramah, others hold it's asur. You can't fix it. But b'di'eved we hold you can fix it with a second melicha. Okay, that's good to know. So that he didn't say here, but he's just telling us if you kept that salt on too long without first rinsing it, it's a problem. But at least we know that by hefsed meruba you can resalt it. So just to finish up the Ramah in this seif, The Rama says, "Ve'ein chiluk bechol ze ben avozos v'shar oifos hachalulim." Don't think there's a difference between meat and ducks and chicken that are hollow. With meat is not hollow. Meat, you have a flat piece of meat, so maybe you would think that the halacha would be different than a chicken or a duck that has a hollow in it, where the dam can go from the top wall to the bottom wall. You know what I mean by the wall? By the piece of, the chicken, the wing, the sides. It can travel through the inside. It has two parts to it. It has a hollow. He says, no, in all of these halachas, there's no difference between avazos v'shar ofis hachalulim. Vilvad, as long as shelo yu miluim bebeitzim or b'shar basar, as long as the hollow is not filled with eggs or other meat. Stuffed chicken, we will be learning next time the halacha of what happens if somebody wants to make stuffed chicken and he wants to do the whole thing barbecue. Neither the stuffing, which is minced meat, ground meat, or the chicken was salted. Is he allowed to do that? And we will see that lechatchila you shouldn't do that. You want to salt each one separately. Or with meat, you can even salt it perhaps together. But with eggs, it's a problem because eggs actually block. And that we saw already before, that stuffing it with the eggs and the shells especially, or actually anything that is not meat, could be a problem. So he says, as long as those chickens that have a hollow are not filled, go ahead and roast it the way it is. Once you stuff it with something, then it's almost like you're cooking it. And then if you're cooking it, you would need to salt it. The custom is when you roast meat, this is just a minhag, not to always turn over the spit, because you want to have the blood drain well. And if you're going to be turning it around, it's not all going to drain. Blood is going to start spilling over itself, and it's not necessarily going to go all the way down. So you don't want to turn it unless it's an occasional turn. But this is just a chumrah and lechatchila, to be careful not to turn it around all the times. Ubedi'eved in lochush, you don't have to be concerned with the evet. Ve'ein chiluk b'chol zeh benim roitze lo'oich lo kach tzli or roitze lo'vash lo haket. There's also no difference whether you want to eat it this way, roasted, as you just did, or if you decide later after the roasting to cook it, you can also cook it. As long as, however, that when you first roast it, it has to be roasted that it's sufficiently edible. How much is that? So as we mentioned, it has to be at least halfways. It has to be at least halfway roasted. Okay, so now, so far, so good. The Ramah introduced some minhagim over here. He spoke about Hadacha Rishona and the potential problems. Now, he goes back and he says like this. What the Mechaber said about Hadacha, the second Hadacha, Yesh oimim de kol tzli tzorich Hadacha achar tzli yosoi. Now, this is not exactly the Hadacha the Mechaber is speaking about, because the Mechaber that was speaking about the Hadacha was before the tzli. But it's a second hadacha. It's an hadacha after it was salted. Here, it has nothing to do with the salt. So some require that every tzli after the tzli, after. Why? Mishum dam hadavuk boy. There may be some blood still that has come out that did not drain, that is still there. Rinse it off. We actually do that. You roasted the meat, you rinse it off. I haven't seen it done actually. Well, I haven't seen that much roasting. Somebody roasted the meat. Usually, he just puts it away. I haven't,
I've seen it, but you're saying it is.
No, he says some say that was the minhag. If you never did it, even if you cooked it this way, mutar. Here he brings down the other hadacha. Even if it was salted before the tzliya and it was not rinsed after the melicha, so here we're not concerned, the Ramah says, about the blood in the salt. If it was not rinsed, this is talking about the rinsing of the mechaber. He did not rinse it before the tzli. Why is it mutar b'di'eved? We're not so concerned about any blood left over in the salt because nura mish'ef shoiv, the fire for sure consumed it all, burned it all up. So there's a lot of halachas here that are lechatchila, how it should be done, and how it should not be done. And if you didn't do it right, sometimes you can fix it later. Sometimes you don't have to worry about it. And that's what the Ramah seems to be saying about the second Hadocha after the Melicha. In other words, we're talking about he rinsed it before. He soaked it, he rinsed it. So there was first Hadocha according to him, but never the Hadocha to remove that salt. Well, the fire took care of it anyway. And as we said before, others hold just wash it off afterwards. But what he gave us over here is some additional minhagim and chumras that are also only lechatchila. So just to review the various opinions, the din of hadocha, kamaisa, the Shuchan Aruch doesn't really mention it. You have a machlokes Rishonim, and Ramban is the one that holds that it requires hadocha, and that's how the Ramah goes by. The Rosh says you don't need one, you're going to be doing sleep. And it appears, based on what the Taz says, that the Machaber will hold like the Rosh. Since he didn't mention it, it's not that we assume you took care of it. No, if it's going directly to Tzli, according to the Machaber, the way the Taz explains, you wouldn't need an Hadocha at all. There's no need for that first Hadocha. Just remember that if you're going to leave it there for a while, it's going to be a problem. That everybody understands. We're assuming at least that when you're doing it, taking it directly to the fire, it's not necessary, especially if you're not salting it. Mechaber says, according to one of you, you're not salting it, then why should you do that at all? The fire will take care of it. If you're going to be salting it, then he brought us two opinions. If you take care of it right away, you don't need to. If you're going to sit it, if it's going to sit there, it's going to be a problem. So Pri Megadim brings down that the Ramah also, who holds the lechatchila you need a docha kamaisa, he holds that the basar does not become asur. That's without melicha. Remember, didn't do a docha because the fire took care of the blood, whatever blood that may have been there. And even if it goes in, kebolo kachpolto, with the fire, we are going to say kebolo kachpolto. So the Pri Megadim tells us that this is how the Ramah would paskin, if it was not salted. Or if it was salted but it did not stay there a long time. You didn't do a Hadocha Rishon, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Sits there for a while, it's a problem. No, he's just saying in case you didn't. In case that even the Ramah would hold that, who holds you needed a Hadocha K'maiser Rechatchila, the Basar does not become Asar. Because the fire takes care of it. The only time it's really a problem is if the salt sat there without being, for a while. So therefore, the Pri Megadim is just letting us know that he wouldn't make an issue of it. The Ramah. But if it was salted, that's where we have the problem. If it's not salted, we say that the Eish takes care of even the Dam Ba'in. If it's salted, then it could become an issue.
So the Pri Megadim is saying you can take sleep?
Yeah, without anything. Yeah, in other words, he's explained the Ramah. In other words, not everybody holds that. Some do require Hadocha K'maiso, sure, anytime. And now, I think that's how everybody does it. I mean, you do rinse it. And by the time we get it, it's for sure rinsed. Yeah, so if the Basar only had the salt a little bit of time, not the Shir Melicha, then even the Ramah would say it would be okay. That the Shach passes like that. Yeah, I think the Rashal, the Taz say that no. That if it sat there even a little bit, I think it wouldn't be mutar. Yeah, they hold even a little bit of time is already an issue. So you want to do Hadocha. That's why it could be an issue. Sometimes you're just better off not salting it. But if you're going to be salting it, do Hadocha for sure. Otherwise, according to some, it wouldn't be sleep would not help it. The Shach, however, explains that the Melicha, a little bit of Melicha, he explains like this. It's interesting. The Shach says the reason why if you did a little bit of Melicha, Tzli helps, is because the dam that came out, or the dam that was nivla, I should say, that was absorbed, was not absorbed so deep. It was a little bit of Melicha, so it wasn't absorbed so much. That is why Tzli helps that. And not necessarily a second melicha. Remember, you need sometimes a second melicha? He says here, this is even better. Tzli, in some ways, is better than a second melicha, because it could help your lechatchila if it only was there for a little bit of time. Whereas in the old case where the Ramah said no, that was where there was no Hadocha Rishona, there was only regular melicha, right? Even if it was a little bit of time, lechatchila, you can't do a second melicha. It's only b'di'evet. Remember that? Only behefsed meruba, I should say. But here the Shach says, look, it's interesting how tzli would help. as opposed to a second melicha in the case where it was only a little bit of salt. The Akiva Eiger says the reason is different. The Akiva Eiger, I think over here, says that the reason why tzli helps is because if you only did a little bit of melicha, there's still a little bit of juice in there. Not all the blood came out. So since the fire is going to bring out the other blood, it's also going to bring out anything that got absorbed. So that's a very interesting explanation. You see, it was not completely out, all the blood. There's still some blood inside because it was only a little bit salty. Oh, now that you're going to draw it out with the fire, you're going to draw out the rest of the blood. You're going to draw out any blood that may have been absorbed through the little bit of time the melicha was there. The Shach says the reason is because it doesn't go as deep if it's only sitting there a little. So that's interesting difference between the explanation given by the Shach and Rabbi Kiva as to why tzli does help. Tzli does help if it only sat there for a little bit of time versus obviously if it sat there for the regular amount of time. Anyway, it's a machlokes, but we hold that it's okay. If, in the end, if it was only a little bit of time, it would be okay. Just want to finish up with an interesting darchei tshuva that I saw. It brings down from some other sefer. What happens if somebody, he has a suffix about this. He roasted the meat less than the shear of chatzitz liyosoi. Chatzitz liyosoi, remember, half is the bare minimum that everybody pretty much agrees with is okay if he did it half. Somebody did not do it halfway. He got a phone call in the middle. He interrupted it, and he didn't do the whole thing. Can he go back later on sometime and finish the job? Or, what's the chashash? The chashash is that perhaps once he stopped the barbecue, it was still hot, and from the heat, it was pirish. Whatever dam was inside was pirish min makom l'makom. Interesting concern.
So he didn't take the meat off the heater.
Well, he closed the main heat source.
So basically the fire is off now.
It's off now, but it's still hot.
But it's still on the metal fork? That's
Maybe,
on?
yeah, maybe. Yeah. That was a
Does it
question.
make a difference?
It may not.
If you took the meat off the fork and put it aside on the table.
It's still hot. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But it's
Is it
quite
hot enough to make
that was another question. Is it hot enough to still continue to cause problems? And that's the question here of is it hot enough to cause the dam to be pirish lepirish, pirish mokum lemokum, and that would be a concern. So he doesn't resolve that question. He has a suffix whether you would be able to continue.
Now, when we cook the meat, you say that it's rabbanan. What about in this case with fire?
Same thing. Same
It's
kind of a
also fire.
situation. Yeah, same thing.
So lechora,
Lechora. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he is not a real Southern Rabbanim.
You don't know if it's fish or not.
Yeah. Oh, you mean that's that? Because it's you don't
So
know
you
the
don't
flour.
know there's an issue here.
Yeah, unless you
Maybe it
assume
wasn't
it.
pirish.
Maybe it's not pirish at all.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah. Anyway, I guess you can say at least that lechora, even if it was pirish, what is the holding it back from coming out the second time?
Put it back on the fire.
Yeah,
So you would have to put it fire.
Oh yes, because he didn't do even chatzitz liyosa. So that's what I was thinking. Why wouldn't it? Apparently, some are concerned that the second time it may not help. The question is how much time went from the first to the second. Did it dry up? That's why. Did it seal itself? That's why he was misupach, obviously, because of all those concerns. Anyway, do a good job the first time, at least chatzitz liyosa, and stay away from problems.
And that's what I'm
Yeah. Okay. We'll start.